On the subject of forgiveness, I thought that we'd end this live stream with a guided meditation on forgiveness. And I really want to emphasize voluntary, because I'd like to go deep into something that you feel is something you have to forgive, and that might be traumatic. And if you feel like that's not something you want to do, then I completely understand. You don't have to participate. And you can just choose something simpler to meditate on, or you can leave, and that's totally understandable. For those who want to stay but not participate, please affirm others who are participating or perhaps joining, as I'd like for this to be a very safe and inclusive space, because forgiveness requires vulnerability. And if we can make this space one in which that's sacred, we turn that vulnerability into something sacred rather than a danger, then that would be a wonderful thing, because I know there's a lot of room for forgiveness in the world right now. So I'd like to go through it very slowly. When we touch on triggering issues, it's so important to affirm everything is in order before we start. Ensure that you have a moment to think about something like this. If your attention needs to be elsewhere in a few minutes, I wouldn't want you to have yourself in the middle of a deep inquiry and then have to wrap it up suddenly or at another time. So affirm that this is something that you feel ready for. Otherwise, acknowledge that another time would be best for this. And you can ground yourself very physically in observance of the world around you. Recognize that your body's here and it will continue to be here, and you won't get trapped in your memory. You can always bring yourself back to something. I have walls around me, good. Roof over my head, 2 legs to stand on, 2 eyes to see. Got my breath, I'm breathing. All this is wonderful. And you can stop at any time. Absolute no necessity to stay for the whole thing. You can pause and come back later. Exactly as is something you're ready for, and no more than that. Now, if you're like me, and you know what it's like to have an anxious mind, even hearing all of that might start to make you worry. You think, oh my goodness, so much talk about being safe. Does this mean that we might not be? That is the nature of the mind, isn't it? The more you affirm, a wounded part might get even more afraid. Oh my goodness! I'm about to be unveiled, and a tender part is about to get hurt. I really got to get out of here. Maybe you can have a stuffed animal with you. Even if you're as old as I am, older, even if you're 200 years old, you can have a stuffed animal with you. Or a blanket. You can light a candle. Have some tea. At no point should you feel like you are without something comfortable. You can take that with you. Alright. Maybe you have something in mind already, something that you'd like to forgive, and I leave this completely up to you. It could be forgiving yourself for something that you did to someone else. That could have happened recently or a long time ago. And if nothing comes to mind, you can forgive yourself for something that maybe you did in a past life. You can make something up, and it's still just as affirming. Karmically, it still functions as creating space. If you're so good of a person you can't think of anything, just imagine you were terrible in your last life and forgive yourself for that. Or you can forgive someone else. You can forgive someone else for something they've done to you or to someone else. You can imagine yourself as another person forgiving themselves. If you feel it is right for you, as with everything, if any part of this process doesn't resonate with you, leave it aside. Not necessary to follow every step. You can forgive yourself for something you've done to yourself. And you can forgive others for doing something they've done to themselves too. Just take a moment to have something in mind and just be aware of how tender that idea is. For some, you might already be at a point where you feel comfortable thinking about it. For others, and for many people, it's totally normal for even that idea to be so scary that just a moment in contact with it can be too painful. Just gauge yourself what level you're willing to connect with it. And maybe you're done already. Maybe just bringing one memory to mind was enough and you can stop for now, and that's totally okay. If you feel empowered to go a little deeper, then continue. And continue to ground yourself, the fact that you're here now, and that it's just a thought. This whole process is really a guided series of thoughts. We can guide our thoughts elsewhere, but we're choosing to guide them this way, to bring us in contact with a corner of our mind that maybe is a little dusty. Maybe you can just imagine, instead of this memory that you've associated this idea with, instead think about the surrounding region of your mind. Feel how new this area is to explore. Just the feeling around the memory rather than the feelings in the memory. Do you feel like this is something that deserves your attention? Do you feel it calling you, and how do you feel about that? What is your relationship with this thing that you wish to forgive? Hold everything in your awareness without judgment. Validate your feelings the whole time. Maybe you feel scared to forgive. Maybe you feel desperate to forgive. Maybe you feel like the idea of forgiving makes you angry because a part of you does not want any justice to go unserved. And that's a part of you that you can acknowledge with tenderness too. Hear all voices that come. Know that it's entirely okay if a part of you seems to contradict another. That part of you knows that it's time to explore the concept of forgiveness, and another part of you does not feel ready. Just like this whole world is made up of many moving parts, so too is our body and mind, and it's entirely understandable. You can imagine all the different perspectives that you have simultaneously, some of them having friction with each other. One part saying that you should forgive, another part saying that you shouldn't, one part saying that you can, but it's not necessary, another part doubting you, saying that you can't, and it's necessary. So many different perspectives we have surrounding this. Just acknowledge all of them. Imagine that they all have a voice to say something important, and you consider all of these voices. And you are a silent listener to every part of you, understanding that it's okay to have all these different perspectives. So just take a moment to acknowledge the different relationships that many parts of you have with this idea of forgiveness, this memory, this process that may be still ongoing. Be affirmed that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. If we forget the past, history can repeat itself. To ensure that something good happens next time, something more good happens next time, then we can keep it in mind without forgetting. They say to forgive and forget, but it's just a saying. You can forgive without literally forgetting. It's just a symbol of speech. To forget means to let go, but you don't have to let go of everything, and especially not all at once. And I'm going as slow as possible to ensure that as many people as possible can benefit, especially those who really struggle. I'm sure that there's some people listening here who are thinking, come on, get on with it. I'm ready. I want to dive in. But let's take our time. It's a sensitive thing. And those who take their time are absolutely valid. No rush to forgive. No rush to forgive. And since this forgiveness is a meditation, that already should tell you something. That it's an inward process. That it doesn't have to involve anyone else. You may forgive someone without ever telling them, without them ever knowing. So we can recalibrate our understanding, if that doesn't make sense, so that we know what forgiveness really means. It doesn't mean that we're ever going to let anyone do something like that again. Doesn't mean that we're going to forget. It doesn't mean that anyone was justified for the things they did. And it doesn't mean that you won't have more room to grow. And this is something that sounds funny to some, but is important to hear from others. That you feel like you can only grow if you hold on to this, but it's not true. Growing comes from letting go, because you need space in order to grow. This is a process of giving you more space to grow. And you'll continue to learn from that experience. And if that experience has empowered you to validate others, if that experience has given you purpose, that purpose isn't to be let go of either. The only thing that is freed up is space for more love, more peace. That's all that will come of that. Forgiveness means to really love yourself so much that you finally bring a part of yourself that has been left behind to the next step, to the journey ahead. As if a piece of you was lost in the past, we recollect that part of ourselves. That's all it is. Just a recollection of ourselves. We don't lose any part of ourselves. We gain it back, actually. So if all that makes sense, we can proceed into whatever thought, memory, or experience is tied to something you have decided to forgive. You can imagine yourself in the activity of something, the thing that you want to forgive. And remember that you are here, safe and sound, that it's just a memory. That reliving it doesn't mean actually going through the suffering again. That's done and done. But the imprints remind ourselves of what it felt like. And it's okay to acknowledge the pain. It's okay to acknowledge all of the feelings associated with that. And if ever you need to take a breath, a sip of water to ground in any other way, it's okay. You're still here. Nothing has changed for the worse. You're in a much better place now. Even if it doesn't feel like it, the very fact that you are here exploring this shows that you have a lot more room to introspect than you did before, and that's wonderful. And you can go back to that thought or series of thoughts as many steps as you like, maybe only catching glimpses of something, and maybe stopping entirely for now if that's okay. That's enough for you? That's okay. No problem. Sometimes it can feel like Pandora's box. And if you fear that if you open that up, then so much more will come out and you don't know how you will deal with it. And that's all part of the process of going back into our traumas. That if we don't, at least at some point, explore these, then it'll continue to build up pressure, you know? At some point we have to release that pressure, and maybe we've already let it get to a point where it is overwhelming, and that's okay. A wise person once said, "The best time to plant a tree was 40 years ago, but the next best time is today." And the third best time is tomorrow. The fourth best time is the next, etc. But know that that feeling of being overwhelmed is only temporary, and your emotions will pass, and they will get easier to process. And you really only have to release the pressure once. Just like a pop, a sody pop. That if it's full of pressure, all you have to do is just slowly unscrew the cap. And then you can take it off, you can put it back on, you can take it off, you can put it back on. And once you've relieved the pressure's gone. So to every uncomfortable feeling that comes with this inquiry of forgiveness, all you have to do is feel that feeling once. You might feel like the feeling comes back again and again, but what if I told you that every feeling that you have, you release, and that you are just coming into contact with one more thing to release, and so you are still making progress. Imagine the people involved, what they mean to you. When you're ready, be just as observant in that moment, retrospectively, as you are in this one, acknowledging your surroundings now and then, what was in the room, what was being said, what did you hear, what did you feel, what occurred to your nose. All the senses. And remember that this experience is a part of you. And because it's a part of you, that implies that you are made up of many, many, many other parts too. And therefore you are a whole which is greater than this part alone. One technique that I've heard is really helpful is to imagine yourself going back in time and creating a kind of resolution in that moment. This obviously won't change the past, but it can give us a new memory to refer back to, a feeling like we've gone through the motions of something we felt needed to happen already. We can imagine setting boundaries where they needed to be, respecting boundaries as well. You can imagine that situation going differently, just as you probably have before, but this time with a different intention. Now when you imagine things going differently, it's not how they should have happened, but something that you mentally go through the process of to almost send affirmation backwards in time to yourself and everyone involved. Now it's no longer about what should have happened. We can let go of the attachment that that's what should have been, and instead we make it so in our memory. And this is one step in the process of healing and forgiveness. We imagine what it would be like for things to go differently so we can learn from that experience too. And we can find value of achieving similar kinds of resolutions now in the present time. Imagine what it would be like for things to have gone better, and then know that that feeling is a part of you now. Consider how everything that was possible then is still possible now. It's just in a different way now. And you unlock the possibilities now by exploring them in the past and relating them to the present, just in the exact way that your intuition guides you. And if there's anyone there to say thank you or I'm sorry, you can imagine saying that at exactly the level that you feel comfortable. This is truly an exercise in imagination. And although our imagination is something distinct from the physical reality, the feelings that come from it are still very real too. Anything you can do in relation to that experience to invoke feelings of resolution, do that. Just permeate that experience with your higher self, coming back in time. Maybe it's a childhood self that you're thinking back on, or maybe even if it's just today. Think that some wiser being has come to uplift a version of you that had been feeling stuck or lost or anything else at that time. Be your own savior, understanding that it is grace that you bestow this version of yourself from the present, that you are here to free yourself from any long withstanding grudges, insecurities, fears, unhealthy desires. That now that you are in a better place in this moment, you have the ability to bring love from future to present, from present to past. And imagine that love flowing both ways too. Past version of you saying, thank you for coming. Thank you for freeing me of this. You can even imagine embracing that version of yourself that had been dismissed or minimized or taken advantage of or was ignorant of something, whatever it may be, depending on if you're forgiving yourself or someone else. Just absolute connection with all parts of that, as if it had been in the dark and you were turning on a light that exists within every part of that experience. That you wash the whole thing in a kind of light. Imagine changing your relationship to this memory such that at all future times that you think back on this, you will remember the love that you have sparked now. And you could never forget the grace that you're giving yourself in this moment, such that that now becomes what you refer back to. That you are saying to the emotions that you had felt at the time that your time is up, that all of these negative feelings that have been serving their job for so long You can now relieve them of their duty and say, a new set of feelings are to fill this space. Such that now when you look back at this experience, you acknowledge the feelings that used to be there, and the impressions that are still there, and the lessons that you're still learning from them. But you also recognize just how much love you give back to that experience now. Love, again, not because you're invalidating something that deserves justice, or validating an injustice, but because this is for you to have a better future, so that you no longer feel like this is something weighing you down, because you know what's possible if you lighten the load on yourself, if you give yourself one less thing to stress about. You know how much is possible for you, and you believe that this is the next step to make your dreams come true. And for many of us, that can be enough of a guided meditation there too. And if you want to continue it further, you can. When every party has imaginatively nodded at each other, shook hands, hugged, whatever, set boundaries where they need to be, waved goodbye, you can bring yourself back to the ways in which you're still dealing with the pains. Because although we can change our association with that experience, still there are things we have to work through in the so-called real world too. There are behaviors that are still going to pop up, patterns of thought that are still going to come up. That's all in the present, and we've just initiated change. And it's like everything begins to dissolve from here on, but it's still a process. And naturally, over the next few minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, you'll discover what it means to continue in that process and let your intuition guide you in that. Let your sense of knowingness occur. If there does need to be a connection made between you and any party, maybe a letter would be empowering to write. Maybe that letter just ends up getting burned in a fire, or maybe it gets delivered, or maybe it gets thrown in the ocean. If there's any symbolic thing that you can do for yourself, that you can feel your past self going, yes, I would love for you to do that for me, then you can put that on your calendar, you can keep that in mind, and just at the perfect time, you will do so. And you breathe in newness of the space that you've opened up for yourself, and you breathe out everything that you know no longer needs to be there. And you feel grateful, you feel affirmed. You know there's still a long journey ahead, but you've taken the step in the right direction. And you feel proud of yourself for doing that, knowing that even that is enough for this moment. And you smile. You allow yourself to cry, to laugh. All the emotions. That is completely understandable. It's good. And you're welcome to do that again. You're welcome to keep going back and continue to empower these experiences. Continue to bring love to everything. and make for yourself a more exuberant, energetic, light-filled being in this present moment. You just alchemize yourself from the inside out. Become ethereal. And it is my prayer and wish and blessing that you move forward with a lightness in each step that you take, getting lighter and lighter from this day onward. And that you never have to feel the way you did again. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May there be peace in our environment. May there be peace in ourselves. And may there be peace in the forces that compel us. And may you experience an ever-deepening peace as each moment passes by. Alright. I think that is a good place to stop there for now. So thank you for participating to the extent that you felt comfortable in this voluntary guided meditation on forgiveness. I hope that was helpful.